Good morning, Toronto. Good afternoon, Europe, and good evening, further Europe. My name is Anna Shternshis. I am director of Tanenbaum Center for Jewish Studies and Malka Green Professor of Yiddish Studies. And I'm very excited to welcome you all to today's really important panel called The War in Ukraine, Jewish Perspectives from the Ground in Ukraine and Beyond. Our program today is co-sponsored by our center and also by the Slavic Department and Peter Jakic Program for Studies of Ukraine, all three at the University of Toronto. Our panelists today come from three different countries physically, and they're on the ground going to talk to us about the most the most challenging, the most troubling, the most the conflict that captivates our attention, something that we live through, and something that is a central event in modern history of the 21st century. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. I'm going to make a few explanations first, and then we will proceed. So this event will come with simultaneous interpretation service. You can choose an audio language on which you want to hear this presentation. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a globe there that says interpretation. So Igor Shchupak will be presenting in Russian. So if you want to hear him speak in Russian, you can choose Russian, or if you want to hear the English translation, you can choose English. And I think the translate, and that will go for other presenters. So other presenters will be presenting in English, but if you want to hear them in Russian translation, you can do that as well. So our four speakers today are Dr. Igor Shchupak, who is a member of Ukrainian Jewish Initiative Board of Directors, an honored educator of Ukraine, who's joining, who was based in Kharkiv for a long time. I don't even know, Igor, where you're located now, but you'll tell us when you speak. And then our next speaker is Fruman, Yiddish translator and a musician. And Ase is right now, I think, in Lviv, but she will, right? Already not.
In Krakow.
In Krakow. Okay, thank you. She will explain a little bit more what happened to her and where she is when she speaks. And then we will hear from Natalia Aleksiun, who is who's I have a longer, more formal bio, who is a professor of modern Jewish history at Touro College, Graduate School of Jewish Studies in New York, and she's also the incoming Harry Rich Professor of Holocaust Studies at the University of Florida in Gainesville. She holds doctoral degrees from Warsaw University, Poland, and NYU, and she specializes in the social, political, and cultural history of modern East European and Polish Jewry and the Holocaust. And she's an author of books and a large number of articles. Natalia, forgive me, I'm not reading all of them, especially some of them in Polish, because it's not time yet to embarrass myself too much with mispronunciations, but I will just read to you that she's her latest project is she co-edited and contributed to the volume called Places, Spaces, and Voids in the Holocaust with Hanna Kubatova, which is just came out in 2021. She's also a co-editor of East European Jewish Affairs and currently is a senior fellow at the Polish Institute for Advanced Studies in Warsaw. And she's writing a new book about Jews in hiding in Eastern Galicia during the Holocaust. Natalia is now in Warsaw, and she will talk to us about what she sees and from her perspective as a Holocaust historian. Last but not least, we will hear from Matvey Chlenov, who is the director of Russian programs for the Harold Greenspoon Foundation, where he is primarily responsible for overseeing the development, launch, and ongoing implementation of a PJ library in a Russian program throughout Russia and beyond, and other foundations, programs in Russian-speaking countries. So Matvey Chlenov has also extensive in-depth knowledge of the Jewish community in Russia, has been involved in the organized Jewish community for a long time, and prior to joining the PJ Library project, he worked as a deputy director of the Russian Jewish Congress. So the way that we will proceed right now is as follows. Igor Shchupak will introduce himself and then proceed with a more formal presentation with the PowerPoint. As I said, you can listen to him in Russian original or in English translation. And then I will take over and ask Fruman some questions, and then Natalia, and then Matvey, and then our audience will have a chance to ask questions as well. I suggest strongly that as you get your questions, the audience, please put them in the Q&A function of Zoom. If the question speaks directly to what the speaker is presenting right now, I'll read it as I see it. If not, we will ask the speakers after we finish the formal part of the discussion. Okay, so Igor Shchupak, please take it away.
Hello, thank you very much for a big honor to participate in this panel. I am Ukrainian Jew, I'm Ukrainian scientist and educator. My biggest interest is Holocaust history in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe. I'm author of many books and scholarly articles and main textbooks on history for Ukrainian students in public schools. I'm director of Tkuma Revival Institute for Holocaust Studies in Ukraine, and Anna Shternshis said about my participation on the board of Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, Canadian very famous organization, and I'd like to talk with my PowerPoint presentation. Can I begin, Anna?
Yes,
I will try. See you, my first slide, the war in Ukraine, yeah, Jewish perspectives, is my personal opinion, my personal point of view to all events to the past and to present. First of all, I'd like to talk about situation before the war in Ukraine, about conditions of development of science, education, and a progress about inter-ethnic and inter-religious dialogue in Ukraine. I can show you different pictures about Holocaust history research in Ukraine, on special research projects, on conferences in different cities, in Dnipro, Lviv, Kiev, in different institutions. I can talk about our collaboration with the Polish partners on what is a Polish-Ukraine Commission of experts, about collaboration with German partners. I'm participant of German-Ukraine Historical Commission, about collaboration with Canadian more important partners, Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, and with French partners. And we had full possibilities for Holocaust study, for Holocaust history research in archives of Ukraine. Here I show unique materials, for example, from Lviv archive dedicated to problematic of Ukrainian righteous among nations. This one very interesting writing works of students of Ukrainian schools after liberation from the Nazi occupation, 1943-44. And now, unfortunately, we are collecting testimonies of students who survived the Russian occupation 2022. I can talk about our scholarly expeditions. It's last expedition to south of Ukraine, to Odessa region, and I don't know when will the next expedition be possible. On this summer, we had meetings with unique person. For example, this woman, she has 99 years old. She's righteous among nations. We had very interesting meetings with veterans in different villages, in cities, and etc., etc. And the result of our scholarly work is books, conferences, including our scholarly journal, Holocaust Studies, Ukrainian Focus, and etc. It's about absolutely free possibilities of scholarly work. About education, it's very interesting fact. Ukraine are first country on post-Soviet territory, post-Soviet space, with obligatory education on Holocaust in all public schools. And thanks to this possibility, we integrate Jewish history and Holocaust history to textbook, to curriculums, and etc. I am author and co-author of main textbooks of Ukraine, publishing generally millions and millions copies, including, for example, these textbooks for 10th class UC dedicated to Holocaust tragedy with aspects, different aspects, and about collaboration, about rulers of Nazi New Order, about Ukrainian or Russian participation in collaboration, about Holocaust with periodization of anti-Jewish politic of Nazi regime, including a very important point, Jewish resistance to Holocaust, including rescue of Jewish, and etc., etc. And you know, I'm from Dnipro. You know, Dnipro, informal Jewish capital of Ukraine, and this one biggest menorah Jewish center. It's biggest community center in the world, and the heart of this center, our museum, Jewish Memory and Holocaust in Ukraine, and our Tkuma Ukrainian Institute for Holocaust Studies. But we talk not only about Holocaust, not only about Jews. You can see pictures about our meetings with Crimean Tatars, including Mustafa Djemiliev, Rifat Chubarov, and our leaders of Crimean Tatars community. And this one on the left, a very interesting picture, it's signaling a letter for the return of the Moscow to the Muslim community of the Dnipro. And first signatures was from Jews, from Ukrainians, from German Ukrainian citizens, and etc. Here you can see our meetings with Roma gypsies, and we have special exhibition in museum dedicated to Roma genocide. You can see different meetings with Ukrainians, Russians, Jews, Crimean Tatars, Chechens, including you see unique picture with Adam Osmayev, commander of Munayev Chechen Battalion, and Amina Akuyeva, people's hero of Ukraine. She killed by Russian terrorists. And after these pictures, I'd like to ask, where are the Nazis or Nazism in Ukraine? My answer is, the Russian Putinist regime used Nazi methods in propaganda and in the war against Ukraine. I mean this definition, Russism, Putinism. like variant of totalitarianism, like fascism, and etc. You know about different ugly events on the territory of Ukraine, about bombing of cities and villages, about bombing and a rocket attack to Babin Yar. You know Babin Yar, a symbol of Holocaust in Eastern Europe, and new tragedy we have here. You know about bombing of different synagogues, for example, in Kharkiv, or different bombing of and a rocket attack against churches, and etc., etc. But if we want to say about Jewish life in Ukraine, what I can say, what is the Ukrainian Jewish community doing now to protect itself? No, first of all, declaration about continuation of Jewish life, including now, you know, about the Purim holiday. This one pictures from Dnipro Oblast State Administration. It's a meeting of representatives of different religion communities, and it was a few weeks ago. This was a picture of Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine, and this federation, this very important organization in Ukraine, organized a regular education of Jewish students, Jewish girls, and children and men. And here I'd like to show you examples of information and messages between different volunteers. And from this text, you can see problematic of our volunteers. You can read. Maybe someone knows who need a crib, I can give. Who is ready to receive refugees from Kharkiv? They are good people, family, plus children, plus grandchildren, friends of my sister. Or Igor, I mobilized to special department and a special department unit. We need sleeping bags. This is the most important thing. Territorially, we are in special place, contact special, or the family was urgently evacuated from Kharkiv. The hostilities stuck in Dnipro, as his wife will give birth in the next couple days, earlier to her due date, and etc., etc., etc. It's absolutely impossible to read, but we need to participate in volunteer activity for supporting to people, for supporting to Ukrainian soldiers. And I'd like to say few words on the end of my short speech. Currently, the city of Mariupol has been wiped off the face of the earth. More destruction than in Stalingrad of Warsaw during World War II. As a result of Russian aggression, thousands of civilian homes in Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kyiv were destroyed. Dozens of villages were completely destroyed. As a result of Russian aggression, thousands of civilians were killed, including more than 100 children. Russia's barbarous war against Ukraine continues. The Russian-Putinism regime will not stop in Ukraine, I'm sure. He is preparing to strike at Europe, and there is a real threat of World War III. Perhaps World War III has already begun, and it will affect everyone. how to stop the Russian aggressor. How can Ukraine be helped? How can Ukrainian Jews be helped? Ukraine is sincerely grateful for the medicines, food, and clothing collected by volunteers around the Canada and world. Now the main task is to deliver it to Ukrainian cities besieged by Rushists. Most of all, the Ukrainian people who are fighting need weapons. In the closed sky from Russian rockets, Russian bombing, ordinary people cannot hand over weapons, but they can raise money to protect people, for bulletproof vests, for safe transport. And my last sentence, I appeal to you with a specific request. We are urgently raising money to buy an armored cars for medical evacuation near Kyiv. This group, Ukrainian Jews and Ukrainians, has experience from 2014. You can see account on Monobank, on Privatbank. Please help to our people, to Ukrainians, to Jews. If you can't close sky in Ukraine. Thank you, and I will be ready for your questions.
Thank you so much, Igor, for this wonderful presentation, amazing background for us to think about, and the visuals really help to understand the vibrancy of Jewish life in Ukraine just before the invasion. And thank you for bringing it. There are questions coming in for you. I will wait for some. But people are asking, there are two kind of suggestions to put links to this charities you're suggesting in the somewhere accessible to our audience, so we can maybe put it in the chat somehow. And also there is a suggestion here from Miki Friederman saying that the recording of this event should go to people who were not able to attend. This presentation will be with the links too, and we'll do that. But there is one substantial question to the nature of your presentation, Igor, and that is from Philip Silver, who is asking rescue operations right now. Are you working with any organizations from outside Ukraine to meet these needs?
Yes, sure. I am participant of different volunteer groups. First of all, volunteer groups in Dnipro is a special close group and more stronger, I think, in Ukraine. And sure, we have a connection with different volunteers group in Kyiv, in Western Ukraine, and etc., etc. It's a first point. And second point, I'm a participant of information war against Russian Putinist propaganda, and I sent my speech on different languages, or this ugly English or regular Ukrainian or Russian, to different audience, to Russian and Belarusian citizens, and to Ukraine. I have special orders from crisis center in Kyiv, from special service departments, and etc. And I'm open for discussion on Facebook.
Thank you so much. And what are you talking about? Ugly English. You gave a beautiful presentation in English. So, and we're very grateful for that and for what you had to say. So I'm going to now move on to our next panelist, Asa Fruman. So Asa was having little issues with her computer connections, and keeping my fingers crossed that it works. So Asa, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you do? Like, I can tell people about how you're translator and singer and all this, but maybe you'll give a more detailed bio. And I will ask you the first question, and that is, tell us a little bit what your life was like in the past month.
Yeah, just a second. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, and we can even see two of you, sort of.
Yeah, hold on. I'll just switch to my computer.
Isa is now in Krakow, so oh look, there's three of you, no, two of you. So we'll see how the internet gods of Poland cooperate with our Zoom presentation.
Oh, okay, let's try it this way. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can see you also.
Good. Yeah, so I've been living in Kharkov for the past, my hometown, for the past few years. I lived in Lviv before and taught Yiddish for a while in the at the Ukrainian Catholic University, then moved elsewhere, then moved back to Kharkov, and yeah, I'm a translator and a musician and an occasional Yiddish teacher. So I was evacuated to Krakow together with my family, my parents and my cat. First to Lviv, then to Krakow, and in a few days we'll hopefully go to Germany.
What was it? You documented a lot of your ordeals in Kharkov, living in that building with your parents, and then trying to get on that train to go to Lviv, and then traveling to Poland. And I think there was a whole following of I don't know, like Yiddish activists, klezmer musicians who were looking every day for your social media post about this. So what was it like to document bombing and all that stuff every day for us?
I didn't plan it as a project on documentation of what was going on. It was just, you know, I actually, before it all started, I had been trying to stay away from Facebook, but then I needed to keep in touch with people because we were all panicky, and Facebook was the easiest way to just stay informed and stay in touch with friends. And at some point I decided just to write this whatever stream of consciousness. We when it all started, we were completely I had been preparing for some kind of minor crisis because I had been, you know, I guess I saw something coming, and I thought that would be some provocations, maybe some occasional shooting. So I've been stocking up on like non-perishable foods and stuff like that. But I definitely didn't expect aerial bombardment and shelling. So when it started, we were shocked, and we had to spend 2 days in the basement of our apartment block, which was not meant to be a bomb shelter, and it actually wouldn't work as a bomb shelter. And I was just writing Facebook entries from that basement because I was, despite the shock of it, I was moved by how organized people were and how calm they were, and I was and still am amazed by the extent of goodwill and mutual help and mutual support and eagerness to help other people, strangers, and this level of spontaneous self-organization, which I first saw during Maidan. And I think maybe what we have now is to a great extent due to what people learned to do during Maidan, to, you know, the whole volunteer network. It really started back then, and this kind of awareness, civil awareness, you cannot expect or the state or somebody else to do what you have to get involved. And I was just appreciating all that, noting all that, writing about people, strangers who were sitting next to me in the basement, helping each other. Our plumber, whom I practically hadn't known before it all started. Our neighbors from, we have a big apartment block, really big one. So there were people I had never met before the war, and the way people would, the kindness, the eagerness to help. I had to write about it because this is what helped us survive emotionally, physically. So yeah.
And it was interesting that like almost every post of yours had a little bit of humor in it. Like once you wrote that your neighbors upstairs started renovation, and in the midst of all this bombing.
Yeah, life goes on. The funny thing was that they've been having this renovation for the last 20 years, as far as I can remember. But it would drive us nuts a bit to wake up to the sound of drill. But this time it was really heartwarming. I thought, so maybe it's not that bad since they're still drilling. Maybe there's still hope.
Sure. Yes. So I want to ask you about the process of leaving. We hear a lot about relief organizations in Kharkov. There's a lot of stories of Israeli, organizations. I don't know, the different volunteer groups trying to help people leave. There are some stories of organized Jewish community trying to help. There are stories of others. What was your sense on the ground? Who is helping who, and how does that all work?
Well, it's hard to tell. For me personally, it's hard to tell because, first of all, there has been a lot of different streams, intersecting streams of information. Facebook, somebody would send telephone numbers, somebody would share Facebook entries, somebody would call somebody, and then that somebody would call us. It was very chaotic. So at first, one of the first things I saw was an article in some local newspaper online about the local Kharkov headquarters of help. Again, volunteers who just organized it between themselves, distributed their resources between different districts of the city, and they said, if you need medications, food, and things like that, here is the number and the name that you can turn to. Here's the number to call if you live here. Here's the number to call if you live there, like Saltovka, which is my district, or Aleksievka, which is like my grandma's district, and so on. This was the first link that I saw, and then a lot of people would post things or call me, or like, there is a Red Cross bus evacuating people. If you want, you can register for it. There appear a lot of different online forms to fill in, to register, but for evacuation or for receiving help. But you had to just register and wait. Then I know that there is a hotline of Chesed charity foundation, and it's this hotline number is for the whole Ukraine. And I think a friend of a friend of a friend brought me in contact with Hashomer Tzahir, whom I don't know at all. It was actually a coordinator of one of their groups who got in touch with me, and
Координатор группы, которая работала со мной.
hello.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, and so and other volunteer groups whom I don't even know whether I got in touch with them or they got in touch with me. We were really overwhelmed with information, but I can hear the interpreter.
Yeah, it's okay. It's they accidentally turn on the microphone. You can ignore it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the volunteers from the Kharkov department of Hashmerat Sair helped us get our part of our documents that we forgot in Kharkov. They picked them up when we were already in Lviv. Some of their guys picked up our documents and other things and sent them to us by mail. As for evacuation, eventually the ones who rescued us were surprisingly the municipal police, and the way they got in contact with us was also through a friend of a friend of a friend. That's how it worked. I mean, that's how it works. Somebody calls you and says, I am calling you from such and such, and we don't even know the such and such. It's like 5 handshakes away from us. But and this is amazing. This is, people don't ask, they just, it's enough for them that a friend of a friend of a friend asked to help somebody. So eventually, yeah, out of all these numerous volunteer centers and organizations that have been trying to help us, eventually the ones who helped us were the police, who got us to the railway station, from our home to the railway station, which was not so easy. For days we haven't been able to leave our home because my district was heavily shelled, and theoretically maybe we could have got a taxi, but it was very risky. So the police came and helped us get down the stairs. The elevators were not working, and we live on the 10th floor, and my father cannot walk, so they packed us into a police van and transported us to the railway station. And there were local volunteers who helped us get on the train to Lviv. And in Lviv, our friends hosted us, but no, they're not just friends, they're also coordinating a group of volunteers. And from Lviv to Krakow, people who helped us get there were also friends of friends, Polish and Ukrainian volunteers who are bringing humanitarian aid to Ukraine regularly, from diapers to bulletproof jackets. And yeah, but there are really a lot of different channels, a lot of different like self-organized and centralized groups that are helping. Like, for example, when I watched the news, they would regularly say, if you need evacuation, here is the hotline for Kharkov, and you can also call 102, which is the the number you call to call the police. So yeah, there's a whole great number of people who do things and organize things, and also just people who say things like, I have a car, I have a van, I want to help.
Right. Well, thank you. I mean, I have so many more questions to ask you, but just very briefly, what's next for you? You're in Krakow now?
We're in Krakow now, and hopefully in a week from now we'll go to Hamburg, and would like to stay there. We have friends there, and again, the person who not just agreed but actually offered to host us as a complete stranger, again, a friend of a friend of a friend, lives in Hamburg, who has a big house, and he reached out to me saying, look, we have a lot of rooms, we want to help. And this is, to me, the most amazing thing about this whole horrible, unimaginably crazy situation, that on the one hand, it does bring out the worst in some people. Because I have never thought that, you know, in the 21st century, after all these lessons, people would willingly shell, you know, maternity hospitals on the one hand. On the other hand, I have never seen so much solidarity and willingness to help. And, you know, I'm walking around the city of Krakow. It's not just that the Ukrainian, you know, flags are on every corner. It's more than that. It's not just the demonstration of solidarity. It's actual help. Like I went to a drugstore, and they gather things for Ukraine. They gather medications. I went to this chain, Rossmann, that sells cosmetics and whatever, shampoos, and they have this special shelf where people can buy some things if they have extra money and just leave them for those who need, to the refugees. And I saw there were like hygienic napkins and creams. People just buy them because they can afford it, and just leave them there for those who need to take, for like women with babies. They can, it's the shelf is by the door, and it says for the refugees. People are there is a headquarters of volunteers at the railway station, at the bus station. Actually, I went to help them last night during the night shifts. There are people from Poland and Ukraine and Belarus, and they meet people from trains and buses. They give them shelter for the night. They give them hot meals and tea and clothes. And I was specifically moved by the fact that now the announcements of the trains are doubled in Ukrainian, because a lot of people who are coming, they don't know Polish and they need to find their train. They're overwhelmed. And the ticket offices have their own volunteers who would, they wear these bright jackets, so that you would see that they're volunteers, and they interpret all the information from Polish into Ukrainian or Russian for people who come to look for tickets. So the help is both, again, self-organized and supported by the city, the state, and it's extremely moving.
Well, thank you, and I hope that your move to Hamburg goes smoothly, and you will return to your Yiddish creativity soon, because Hamburg is known for being a center of Yiddish life, because and all this, and the chat is exploding with questions to you, so you can look at them now. And thank you for sharing with us and being here. So we'll now move on to Professor Aleksiun. And Asa just finished with talking to us about Poland. So Natalia, you're now in Warsaw, and you're involved in working and helping Ukrainian refugees. So I want to ask you again, what was your life like in the past month? But I will not let you get away. Just tell us what you did, but also maybe a little bit of your perspective as a Holocaust historian who's now on the ground working with Ukrainian newcomers to Poland, the Ukrainian refugees.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for putting this conversation together. And thank you, Igor and Asia and Matvey, for being here with me. I was trying to put some order into this for just a few minutes. So ironically, I just a few days before the invasion, before this crazy war, I agreed to be the coordinator of a series of lectures put together by my dear colleague who is now in Hamburg, a refugee scholar, Marta Havryshko, for Babin Yar, a Holocaust Memorial Center. And it adds to something that Igor was showing us, which also has been my experience of coming to Ukraine and teaching. This is how I met Asya, I think, many years ago, teaching at the Center for Urban History in Lviv, that there is a tremendous interest in the Holocaust and openness to discussing the Holocaust, not only in a context of Ukrainian righteous, not only in the context of Andrei Sheptytsky, but also in a context of difficult history and collaboration and participation. And when Marta and I were putting together the program for the lectures that were actually to start tonight and be once a month for a broad audience of students and educators, especially in Ukraine, this was our goal. We were actually specifically talking about having scholars come and talk via Zoom about difficult aspects of the history of the Holocaust in Ukraine. So I just wanted to say it again to amplify what Igor was sharing with us, that this is a place where difficult conversations were and continue to be taking place, are not shoved under the carpet. And I haven't asked Marta, who moved like Asya from across the Polish border and then to Hamburg. I hope that that we will come back to this, that we will come back to building something in terms of Holocaust education for and in Ukraine, with wonderful scholars from all over the world. Now, in terms of my own work, now it's very strange, it's very weird and emotional in ways. Of course, I cannot compare the horrors that Igor and Asya had experienced, and I'm sitting comfortably in Warsaw. But it so happened that when the war started, I was working on a chapter of my book on hiding, about the material culture of hiding. That is, what do you take with you when you have time to pack your home and to escape, whether you escape to the forest, or you escape to your neighbors who agreed to take you, or you just understand that the akcja, the roundup, is starting and you have 2 minutes to grab something and grab your child and run. And I must say, I'm not in for, easy comparison and drawing parallels. And in some ways, I think that the whole discussion, whether this is like the Holocaust or not, is kind of pointless, because war crimes are committed, genocide is going on, and whether this fits it or doesn't, for me as a Holocaust historian, is really irrelevant. But I could not think about my chapter when I started coming to the central train station in Warsaw, and I did a number of shifts there, and I encountered and interacted with people, mostly with women, with 1, 2, 3 children, who had their entire life in 2 plastic bags, and who were receiving things that were normal, were in their cupboard just a couple of weeks earlier, Tylenol and tampons. So it just, that kind of flashbacks to my sources were inevitable. The other aspect of this flashback were the impossible decisions. In my project, in my book, I'm very much interested in actually what Asia was telling us about, in these informal and formal family, friend networks, both in terms of when people were running for their lives, trying to save themselves, and when people were being helped. Right, so much of this was whether you run, but you leave behind parents who are not capable of going with you to the forest, or you're leaving behind a limping aunt, or who has the luxury of trying to struggle for survival in hiding or passing as a non-Jew. And I started having these impossible conversations on social media with my former students from Lviv and colleagues, and suddenly, learning about their private lives because we knew one another from conferences. And I didn't know, like Asia, I was sure when I started reading your messages, I was sure you were in Lviv. And only it took a few days when I realized that you are actually in Kharkiv. And this kind of, who do you have? Do you have your parents with you? Can your parents run with you? Do you leave your husband behind and take your child with you? Really impossible decisions of how you strategize it. And then those networks that Asia mentioned so movingly, which again, the extent to which, in my research, so much of the assistance, also betrayal, but so much of the assistance are those relations that before the Holocaust were completely different relations, right? Someone was someone's wet nurse, someone was someone's nanny or client or classmate, and then they become people that you go in the middle of the night and knock on their door and ask to keep you for a night or two, or for what turns out to be months or a year or two. So these are those intimacies of life-changing, life-saving situations that again, I'm not drawing simplistic parallels, but it's simply between the testimonies that I've been reading, taking notes, and putting things into the chapter, and life that has unfolded. And I want to say to what Asia was saying about the situation in Poland from the side of people who got involved. I'm also incredibly moved by the grassrootness of it. I did night shifts because there were less volunteers then, and there would be people bringing sandwiches and chocolate and tampons and ibuprofen and stuff all the time, and it's just one of the many train stations. There is also a fascinating linguistic aspect. I'm the dinosaur. I'm the last generation in Poland that had obligatory Russian from second grade. But as soon as Poland educational programs were independent, Russian was removed. And so people who are in their 20s and 30s don't speak, are helpless with Cyrillics, and they also they struggle with Ukrainian, even though it's such a close language, but they have no exposure to Slavic languages. They usually have English at school. And so it's fascinating to see and heartwarming the efforts to communicate of all these young 20-year-old men and women at the train stations who not only are there because they just can't sit at home, they need to do something, but they suddenly realize that they need to find a language to ask where someone is going, where someone wants to the ticket, or do they have a place to stay. And much of it is grassroots. I mean, for me, one of the most incredible organizations is Folkowisko, which was dealing with cultural festivals, and now they are organizing assistance. They completely remade themselves into this this activity, but we'll see. And back for a second to Igor, to what you were saying, to this abuse of history. It's fascinating to see how much. This is not my field. I'm only seeing it on Facebook, but it's fascinating how much of the trolling is actually trolling now in Polish accounts vis-a-vis Polish audience, how much it's trying to activate historical half-truths references, and how much also in a Jewish context the Holocaust is constantly brought up as if this was some kind of apropos to the horror and human tragedy that is taking place. So I think that history is put into this situation before our very eyes constantly.
And I have to say, like Natalia, as I'm listening to you now, I'm thinking about the role about those, history doesn't repeat but rhyme, statement, and thinking about the role of Jewish rescue organizations in all this. So, I'm working with a woman from Vinnytsia, Victoria Kirchner, and I don't know if she was here, like among audiences, who had to run from Vinnytsia to Moldova, and then to Moldova to Vienna, and all that was organized with the help of the local, I think, Chabad organization there that bussed them through everywhere. And during the Holocaust, of course, the role of Jewish organizations was crucial in the rescue and survival. And yet, when Asya and I spoke a little bit before this event, Asya said, it's astonishing, and I say, if I'm misrepresenting what you said, correct me, it's astonishing how little we actually talk about being Jewish in the process of being rescued. Right, Asya? Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I said. I said that neither I nor anyone I know give a damn about who's Jewish and who's not in this in this situation, because we're all in one boat and it has nothing to do with anyone's ethnicity.
Right. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you for correcting. So it's good that I don't get to speak for you. So, so Natalia, like my question to you, and that's would be my final question to you, so that we can move on to Morty next. So, how do you make sense of that? Like, what does that? What do you think about the role of the organized Jewish community in all this? I mean, the event is called Jews in Ukraine, the perspective and all this. So, I'm curious about your thoughts, and also the questions that are coming in. If I have to quantify, like half of them are asking about getting involved and donating and all this kind of stuff.
I think that this is the only way in which I can make sense of it. That is, hopefully going to the central train station tonight, and I hope that everybody in some way gets involved, gets to be part of assisting in whatever way they can. And I must say that among the people, Asya, you mentioned this international community. In one of my shifts, I was standing between a dude from Scotland who was Russian-born, adopted and raised in Scotland, and currently living in Sweden, who hopped on a ferry and came to Warsaw because he said, I'm doing food, I'm good with food, so I thought I will be useful. And two Chabadnik boys from Brooklyn. And we were this weird corner between apples and tampons. So I'm very, very proud to see Hayas getting involved and JDC getting involved, and I hope that people individually will simply get to doing things as much as they can.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And again, like, look at questions, and to our audience, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We will get to them when we can. And if you have questions for participants, just put them in and they will answer if they have a chance. So now I want to turn to Matvey Chlenov. This is a good segue for us to talk about organized Jewish community. I know that you have been involved in organized Jewish community for a very long time, you know, and you sit in Moscow right now. Now, this is a conversation that does not often happen yet, and that is, you know, what about Russian Jews? You know, the stories we hear about Russia are stories that are horrifying, the stories of persecution of free speech, jail sentences for, you know, saying the wrong thing, a lot of conversation about people leaving. Of course, the eyes of the world are on Moscow, and eyes of the Jewish world are on Moscow Jewish community. So, or Russian Jewish community. Shouldn't believe, like, you know, I am from Moscow, so I think the whole Russia is in Moscow, but of course, that's not the case. So, Moti, tell us a little bit about, you know, what do you see, what you've been witnessing, what it is story with the organized Jewish community and with Jewish people in Russia, and your perspective on that.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much for inviting me. I also share your passion about Moscow. I also think that it's actually the main place. Look, I think that I can touch some points here, and not just from the Jewish perspective, but also from general perspective, and allow me avoiding some things and concentrating on others. But let's just kind of ask ourselves this way. I mean, how does the ordinary Russian people, how do they perceive this, disregarding the news? I mean, what do they think about their life? How they perceive this event, which is so dramatic? So interestingly, most of they're actually, I was trying to analyze this for myself, because it's very hard to take any polls that are conducted here. Most of them are not reliable, and I think it's better to rely on your personal opinion and senses. So from what I see, the country here, the population here, is roughly divided in two parts, and you will be surprised by what I'm saying here, that some people are saying, we've been through kind of crisis, through lots of crises in our lives. We've been through the crisis of 1998. We've been through the crisis in 2008. There was a crisis in 2014. So it looks like there's another crisis. We're going to have a hard time. Things are really bad. But, you know, since we are used to the crisis, we'll get over this as well. And I'm carefully avoiding here any kind of political things here. And then there's another suggestion which says that no, I mean, this crisis is not comparable to anything we had back in '98 and so on. It's a very unique disaster, which and the crisis, which can only be compared to something which happened when you know, when there was a massive transformation from Soviet Union to the modern Russia back in the end of '80s. And a lot of people, I think, including myself, we believe that what happened recently, months ago, was a clear sign of the end of the modern Russia as a project, as a country, something which started back in 1991. And this is in no way comparable to any this kind of crisis that was like the first group was thinking about. And of course, if you think about the situation from this perspective, this is like also we have to come back to the Jewish perspective and see how Jews reacted 30 years ago, how they reacted to that kind of crisis. And you may well remember it because we were like sharing the same experience when a lot of Jews in this country back in the end of 80s, they were basically and for the general audience, I want to remind you that in the end of 80s, in the beginning of 90s, between the year 89 and 93, there was a massive wave of immigration of Jews from the Russia and from other republics of the Soviet Union, which resulted in nearly 1.7 million immigration from that of that time. So it was really massive. And what happened at that time, if we are trying to describe and see the parallels, we may remember that at that time people were mostly experiencing two kinds of feelings. They were first feeling unsafe, and they were feeling situation is totally unpredictable. So there's two things, you know. Back in 1989, if you check the mood, and interestingly, the transformation which took part 30 years ago, which happened right after that, was pretty amazing. I mean, it was one of the most dramatic transformation of Russia from the totalitarian Soviet regime to kind of modernization, to kind of new life, when people started to enjoy a lot of freedoms, a lot of things that never happened in their life before. And for example, it was like the modernization. It was Russia became the market economy, member of international institutions such as WTO, World Bank, J7. Russian citizens enjoyed traveling abroad. We were able to not just to travel, but also to have multiple identities in our passports. And of course, kids were going to Western universities to study, and so on and so forth. And accordingly, the Jewish life also developed pretty dramatically in the past, in this 25 years, which actually started back in '89 and ended in 2014. And most importantly, the Jewish community became reunited with the world Jewish communities. The immigration to Israel was like a normal thing. The immigration to other countries was a normal thing as well. So that was, looking back at what's going on now, we can say that this 25 years that started with late perestroika and ended with 2014 was a pretty interesting time, maybe unique for Russia. Since 2014, unfortunately, things began to deteriorate. And since the 1 month ago, we are basically looking at free fall, return to a very, very hard times. And of course, one can only judge what will be next for this country. And I think that no one is expecting any transformation for good. And what is interesting that people are feeling again unsafe and unpredictable. Situation is still unsafe and unpredictable. Speaking about Russia, and the same as 30 years ago, we're not asking ourselves, why are we leaving? We're again asking ourselves, do you have a reason to stay? And this is like something very reminding me of this, of this situation that happened many, many years ago. So it is interesting. Yeah. So it is interesting how much will be left from the Jewish life here in the next years. And this is, I think, the answer that no one can really tell you for sure. A lot of things are still developing here. And what we are currently looking here is that there's a clear trend, there's a clear wish among the Jewish community to preserve what was done here during the past decades. I think that In many instances, you can ask why there is no statesmen from the Jewish community and so on and so forth. I believe that a lot of local leadership are trying to do two things. They're trying to establish the safe channel of immigration to Israel for some people. And the second is trying to preserve the infrastructure that were essentially built during the past 30 years, which is huge, which is big. And, so if you will ask me, should we expect a huge immigration wave from Russia to other countries? I wouldn't tell you something definite at the moment. I would say, yeah.
So, it's interesting to me about this parallel of that you're bringing from 1989 to 1991. I remember that time very well. And, but I would say that one big difference is that when Jews were leaving the Soviet Union and then Russia at that time, they were seen as universally kind of, disadvantaged in Russia, victims of discrimination, victims of, suppression. And they were going to the world that was not super ready to accept them, but at least was sympathetic to them. Right now, Russian Jews are in a very different situation because some of them are leaving because they're protesting, they can't handle whatever. Some of them are in danger, and yet others are under sanctions. It's not a secret for anyone that Jews are, overrepresented among oligarchs, also in Ukraine, not just in Russia, and this kind of stuff. So the situation of them leaving is much more ambivalent. It's much more like, are they leaving because they can't handle the regime, or are they leaving because they're afraid for their money, kind of thing. And that is something that we haven't seen yet with Russian Jews. And I'm curious about Jewish communal life for sure. And when I was in Moscow 2 years ago, I was, 3 years ago with COVID, I lost count. I was actually struck by how, unapologetically luxurious the Jewish life was, with all this extravagant, events and all these sorts of things that I don't remember when I was living there. But now there is this dichotomy that we didn't see before. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about just conversation that you hear with people, not necessarily positions of organizations, because you're not speaking on behalf of any, but just, like people, Moscow Jews like you, dealing with stuff, and what are the things you could share with us?
Well, look, again, what I say, the contemporary Jewish life here is enormously connected, is built on the success that has been here for this 25 years. And of course, the majority of Jews, the overall majority of Jews, are terrified and feel unsecure. This is what I say. And the immigration, I think, is now considered to be an option for so many of people here. Now, if you're talking about what people are talking here, most of the people are waiting their chances for the successful absorption outside of Russia. Unfortunately, for those of Jews who flee from Ukraine, they don't have an option of waiting their chances for a successful absorption. Right. Their life is clearly in physical danger. They have to get out. For Russia, hopefully, still, life still for Jews there's no physical danger for Jews here. And so people usually, they don't think about just leaving Russia. They think where they will be able to continue their life and self-realize, self-fulfill themselves, both as professionally, personally, and so on and so forth. So my impression is like this. There is a small fraction of very well-established and very visible individual who decided to leave immediately for the sake of the political protest. And as we all know, most of the immigration waves, they can start as a political, but they definitely will grow only if it's economical. So only the future of Russia, the economical future of Russia will show us how large will be the wave. Currently, it looks like it's going to be very large because the economic perspectives here are so bad. I mean, it's much worse than anything ever we experienced in the past 3 decades. And of course, as a Jewish professional, as a person who deals with the children education project, I can tell you that the scale of the immigration will be visible after the end of the academic year. Parents will start going to Israel after the kids will end their classes. So look for the numbers, not now, because currently Israel only reported 6,000 new immigrants from both Russia and Ukraine. But look for July, look for August, look for September, and you will see probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, people leaving Russia. My personal estimate is that this year alone, 50,000 Jews will immigrate from Ukraine and from Russia to Israel, and the majority of us will be from Ukraine. Russia will probably be around 20,000. I mean, is this a lot? I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that it's a big number. Of course, it will be unprecedented for, since the early 90s. And we'll see. But the scale of this exodus will be visible only with the lag of 6 months or 4 months from now.
Yeah, it's a very good point about the end of academic year, and also, families with boys the age of 16, 17, they're going to try to leave for draft. And it's back to that question that Natalia was also raising: who stays and who goes and why, and the factors of dangers to life versus dangers to prosperity versus the future. They become super important. And as you say, Moti, it's crucial right now that people have a little bit of choice or they feel like they have a little bit of choice in Russia as well. And yeah, so I'm going to, is there anything else, Moti, you'd like to add before I open the discussion for everyone else?
Let me just add one small thing here, that when we speak about the Russian language, or people who feel connected to the Jewish community here, we should always keep in mind that the most of the families who are connected to Jewish communities are families from the mixed families background. Not just those who have one parent is Jewish in the family, but usually it's only a grandparent or grandmother is Jewish. And sometimes you have even a great-grandparent is Jewish. My program, which is PG Library, we send Jewish books to Jewish children and mixed marriage families from age 2 to age 8. And I have to say that statistically, and we verified it a couple of times, only 30% of our customers say they are only Jewish. Others say we're Jewish and someone else. So if you are trying to get the idea how many people will leave, always imagine that there will be Jewish life here that will be predominantly life by those who are some part Jewish, some part someone else. So the Jewish life in Russia will continue. And from my perspective, it's very important to make sure that the Russian Jews are feeling part of the international Jewish community, feeling part of the diaspora. This is something that we can lose if this, new Iron Curtain will fall. Then there will be a huge fight for this, not just for exit.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And it would be interesting if Chabad stays and what it will do in all these places as well. We haven't talked much about this, but of course it's an important institution that deserves to be discussed as well. So I will look at this Q&A, I promise, but I just want to go around again for like 1 minute or something and give our participants a chance to react to what they've heard and maybe add a little bit to what they wanted to say. And then also I will read some questions. So Igor, we'll start with you again. We'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you. No, first of all, my reaction to speech of Matvey. He said about crisis after collapse of Soviet Union, after 1998, and etc. But now we need to say about mass killing of people. It's not only crisis of economical crisis and etc. Its main point, and we hope that Russian friends or partners need to remember about this approach to understanding of our situation. Next point, I see questions on chat. Can I answer to few questions or no? Two remarks I need to open. First of all, thank you very much to Framovich, Eva, for she's invited to Great Britain for Ukrainian families, and many other questions, but I see a very big question from Marsha Kaman about historical background of these events, about Khmelnytsky and Nemirov, and etc. etc. You see, it's a very big question, and we can't possibility to talk about history and about history memory. But I'd like to say a few theses only. First of all peoples has different national memory. And we know that the national memory of Poland and Ukraine are different. Poland and Russia are different. And we need to see a next point that the national hero of one nation can be a criminal murderer for another nation. We can say about Petlura or Khmelnytsky or Bandera and etc. etc. But main point, no historical reason for war and criminal now. Because if we are looking for historical reason for war, all people can kill all people. It's impossible. And historical mythology on the brain, or I don't know, is it brain or nothing on head of Putin, is the reason of potential world war. We need to research historical problematic, and we need to understand present situation, and we need to know mythology in national memory of each country, each people. But it's very shortly, you know, I think we need to dedicate to problematic of historical memory and historical mythology special program or special panel, special discussion.
Yes, they're very important. Yes, I was going to actually ask all of you more about that rhetoric. Especially yesterday, I heard this really chilling interview with Christiana Avanpour interviewing Dmitry Peskov on CNN, and I was, you know, when he kept saying Nazi, you know, like he can't say Nazi, he says Nazi, and I don't know, like it's just something about this that that really needs to be discussed. But really important point, Igor. Thank you for raising that, and there's a lot more to say. Asya, to you, do you want to add anything or comment on anything you've heard?
On what specifically?
On any.
No, I'll abstain.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Natalia.
I actually will add a sentence to what Igor was saying. I was also looking into the questions earlier. So apropos different collective sets of heroes, I've watched the discussion online under, I believe this was an article in the Washington Post, which had the image of the monument of Khmelnytsky as an illustration. And there was a big discussion among Jewish participants about how they are turned off by this image and the collective memory of what this means. But just like Igor said, I mean, this is an academic discussion that will be wonderful to have when people can return to their homes and when people are no longer shelled and killed daily. But it's fascinating, again, from the, I'll just give you one example from Poland. There is now a big controversy because the Ministry of Education has announced the beginning of a competition for school children. School children should go to their relatives and ask them about the ethnic cleansing, the bloodshed in Volhynia, which was one of the sites in which this terrible triangle of Poles, Ukrainians, and Jews during the war, with Germans in the picture very much, the bloodshed that was taking place there. And it's part of Polish, extremely profound Polish collective trauma and Jewish collective trauma. And a huge number of Polish historians, not at all of them involved in history of the Holocaust, history of Ukrainian Polish relations, but Jewish history, wrote a letter saying, this is not the time, cancel it. We don't want this competition now, this is inappropriate. So far, the ministry refused to cancel it. But yes, there is a discussion to be had, and to have conference papers and lectures, but this is not part of what we're facing, what Ukraine is facing now.
Yeah, I know. I also find those discussions of parallels and Khmelnytsky and Cossacks and pogroms and I find them so irrelevant. And as a person who's like in the midst of writing a book about, well, okay, lying, not writing a book, thinking about writing a book about Holocaust in Transnistria. I mean, I don't know, like it's just like it's so I'm really into that material and I'm reading a lot of stuff about this, but somehow those discussions right now don't make any sense, especially when they go in and justifying some sort of inaction or action that have to do with the war. So I completely agree with you. And there is something to think about luxury of academic setting when you have some distance, some peace, I don't know, quiet space to think about those issues for sure. Okay, so Motya, back to you to give you like a chance to comment on things that you didn't have a chance to say, and also I see that there's a question in the chat from our colleague Donna Orwin asking about Jewish life in Russia today. I mean, you addressed that, but I think that question came a little bit after, so maybe some additional stuff you want to share, but just give you a chance to say anything if you have.
Yeah, well, of course, I do understand the complexity of the situation in Ukraine. I'm just not going to comment on this for different reasons. And one of the reasons is that I'm not in Ukraine. And the second reason that I feel I don't have all information with that. And I would better comment on something which I can, tell you from here. Yeah, I saw a question about the oligarchs. I saw a question about the Jewish life in Russia today. Look, it's speaking of oligarchs, jokingly, I think like these guys are going to be like really, really ostracized now from both sides, because unfortunately the new type of Russia that we are entering, and I'm afraid we are entering. This is the country which has no stand for these Jewish oligarchs that you may think of. I encourage you to go and quote someone a very well-known Jewish oligarch who basically is saying that he has no authority on anything. That he would love to be useful in this situation, and except for Mr. Roman Abramovich, who genuinely decided to be a mediator between Ukrainian and Russian sides during the negotiations, I don't see any other involvements of Jewish oligarchs, with exception that they genuinely trying to to keep things as they were and to save some structures that were building. Speaking of the role of the oligarchs in contemporary Jewish community, you'll be surprised, but for the past 30 years, the biggest donors for the Jewish communities were international Jewish organizations. And they were bringing money, not just to Russia, but also to Ukraine, also to Belarus, also to Moldova and Kazakhstan. Organizations like Jewish Agency, Joint Distribution Committee, many foundations, and so on. It's oversimplification to say that the money from Russian oligarchs were basically paying for the Jewish life here. Of course, there are some high-profile cases, a lot of donations were made, but still, the majority of money that are spent here are spent on charities related to the elderly, because the Jewish population in Russia continue to be pretty much demographically very old. And with the new wave of immigration, when the families with young kids, families with young boys especially will immigrate, I think that the situation will go even more dramatic. A Russian community will not be able to sustain itself, and it will need the same or even more amount of money from groups like JDC to support the elderly. So this is my analysis. I mean, the situation is deteriorating here. Of course, there's no way to compare it to Ukraine. And the future of Ukrainian Jewish community is a separate subject I'm not going to touch for. But the Russian community, of course, the Russian Jewish community is, of course, entering a very grim years. And we don't know how long it will last. Thank you.
I know. Thank you, Matvey. And
Can I say
Igor, before you say, I just want to say that I got a text message from Asya saying that she might have to leave. So I want to publicly thank her for her participation here. And I just texted her that my phone is exploding from messages thanking you, Asya, for your wonderful contributions. And they thank me for your contributions. But I'll take that as well. We're so glad you could join us. And
Thank you for having me.
And we wish you luck, and I hope to have you back in my Yiddish group to speak to us in Yiddish, as we planned a few years ago. And good luck with your adventures in Hamburg, and your family too. Please stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Igor, now back to you.
Asya, good luck. A few words only. We need to be careful with definition. When we say about Holocaust, genocide, Nazism, and etc., etc., it is impossible to compare the Holocaust and the modern war, Russian against Ukraine, because comparisons are always inaccurate. Holocaust are unique genocide, but what they have in common is the murder of people, Ukrainians. And I'd like to address you to an article of Viktor Portnikov, a famous journalist, with parallel between events in the Second World War and now. But last time, I'd like to repeat, we need to be careful with definitions.
So true. So true. Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions from the chat. So I see a question from David Kosover. Hi, David. And it's a question to Matvey. How well are Russian Jews informed? How well informed are Jews in Russia about what's really happening in Ukraine, and how much are they submerged in Kremlin propaganda like other Russians?
I have no answer for that. I mean, how can I verify that? Say how much? We don't know. I can say that when you invited me for this talk, I generally tried. I mean, I researched, I Googled it, I Yandexed it, whatever I did it, to find any public statement on behalf of Jewish organizations who they will say they support the special operation of Russian military of Ukraine. I haven't found any statement from any Jewish organization. For example, when in 2014, the Crimea became part of Russia, some Jewish organizations in Russia, they supported this thing. In this situation, I haven't found anything. The situation is still developing. maybe there will be some voices who will say, we support this. But currently, I don't. From what I see, looking for my friends and relatives, I was not able to find almost 2 people who will say I'm in favor. I believe that most of the Russian Jews feel that by self-isolating itself from the entire world, we are losing more than we gain. I think that Russian Jews, I would expect them to be more negative about the situation than positive. But again, this is only my guess. We are not serving people. And I will be the last person to survey my customers, asking them question, do you support this or not? And
it would be strange as someone who works in PJ Library and sends those kids books, and we have that program in Canada too. And if a survey came asking what my political views are, I would too be surprised. So no, for sure. We live in the midst of unfolding historical situation. So, we see what we see. So thank you so much for that, Matvey. Okay, our next question, I think I would address it to Natalia. It's a question from our PhD student, Lauren Fedova, who is saying, incredible program. Thank you all so much for sharing your unique, valuable, and very different perspectives on this tragic moment of history. I'm currently in Warsaw doing my research for my PhD, and I'm looking for ways to volunteer and provide aid to Ukrainian refugees. This lecture has inspired me to increase my efforts to do more. Thank you. So I was going to ask Natalia to comment a little bit and maybe make some concrete suggestions to Lauren and people who are listening.
Well, if you are in Warsaw, and hello.
First,
Anna,
look up Natalia.
Yeah, you're fully authorized, Anna, to pass my secret number. But in Poland, it's fairly easy because train stations and centers that distribute basic necessities are really the easy place to go to and to simply offer your help. There are also websites, Facebook groups, which you can join, bilingual, usually Polish, Ukrainian groups, where people search for specific assistance, advice, and it would be, I mean, really, I think any amount of time and resources and goodwill will make a difference. But also, I mean, back to everyone, to the link that Igor shared with us. I think it also matters not only to focus on the need of refugees, but also on the needs of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians who are in Ukraine.
And I think that suggests to us that, this conversation needs to be continued, and I want to wrap up. I know there are more questions, but our time is up by 12 minutes. And I want to just say thank you so much for our participants, to Igor, to Natalia, to Matvey, and to Asa. I know that it's an incredibly busy time for you, and especially for Igor and Asa being on the move, and finding even a quiet place to speak is a challenge, let alone time and everything. Your perspective is incredibly important here. I know audience appreciated you coming here, sharing the story with us. It will be continued, and I wish you all luck, success, and as Natalia said, a quiet and productive distance space in the future. We can have an academic conference about what's going on rather than doing notes from the field as the events unfold. Thank you so much.